As the warmer air moves in, so do one of the most beloved tourists, puffins. Thanks for joining us on our streaming app. I'm Amanda Hill. We here at News Center Maine had a lot of fun learning about puffins inhabiting coastal islands a few summers ago and sharing some fun facts with you. Puffins really only spend their summers with us while they're mating and raising a chick, so we have a limited view of the seabirds. And with your help, News Center Maine actually adopted and named a puffin living on eastern Egg Rock. We talked with a variety of researchers, both living on the islands and those in Newfoundland, which is where our current puffin population comes from. We also heard from the man responsible for the puffin resurgence, and our own David Guildford learned more about the very helpful process of chucking a puffin. We'll explain. Here's a look back at our summer of puffins, starting with a conversation with Don Lyons, Director of Conservation Science with the Audubon's Seabird Institute.
Puffins tend to come back to the place where they were reared themselves. So if you lose a colony, it doesn't very commonly restart. It really takes an intervention or a very long time, decades or perhaps longer, before a colony might restart. So at the time, 50 years ago, there were healthy colonies, there still are, healthy colonies of puffins in Canada. So chicks were brought down to begin that reseeding process. And it was really important that the biology of puffins was well understood. Puffin chicks, it turns out, don't need support from their parents after they fledge. They're fully capable and independent. They learn how to forage, catch fish on their own. Then they can grow up, mature, get really good at catching fish, can attract a mate after a few years and begin to nest themselves.
How big is the population now that you're taking care of?
We have roughly 3,000 puffins. About 2,500 of those nest on islands where Audubon works.
And why is it so important for the Audubon to be involved and to protect this species?
If we don't manage their habitat, avoid islands becoming vegetated over, or if we don't protect them from predators like bald eagles, which we can protect them from just by being present on an island. If we give up those steps, then kind of the other effects we as people, as a society, have on these island ecosystems will cause us to lose puffins again.
You have biologists who live on some of these islands, and some of them through the summer, with these birds. What are they studying? What are they doing while they're there?
So they undergo a lot of sacrifices, but they get to live amongst birds and really study them. And that helps us understand how many birds are there, how many puffins and some of the other species we work with, what they eat. And that's become a really critical part of understanding what's going on in the ocean. But puffins and other seabirds are out there sampling, catching fish every day. So I like to think of them as another great research team that's out there studying the ocean for us.
Is there still much more that needs to be learned? What would you still like to learn about them?
The ocean here is changing. The Gulf of Maine is changing more rapidly than perhaps any other place in the global ocean. Really warming quickly. And with that comes a lot of changes in what fish species are present and how abundant they are. And the puffins are really telling us about those changes. And that'll be very helpful to understand how those changes will impact puffins, but also the broader ecosystem. We're very capable of saving puffins and saving wildlife. Puffins are just an example of what we can do when we set our minds to it, when we focus on that, and a great example of hope. But it needs that focus and that commitment to holding on to species. We can if we are intentional about it.
Eastern Egg Rock was badly damaged by some of those coastal storms we had back in January of 2024, not just affecting where researchers live and work, but also the burrows that puffins return to year. Don Lyons spoke with us about that cleanup effort as well.
One of our islands, we've had a wood cabin on it for decades, over 40 years, Eastern Egg Rock. We affectionately know that cabin as the Egg Rock Hilton. And that had never been significantly impacted by storms prior to this past winter, but it was swamped and lifted, rotated. It moved about 15 feet, was significantly damaged. We're getting by right now with some wall tents and kind of a makeshift solution. We hope to renovate that cabin and it kind of reestablish that structure for the research team there. It's an important space as office space, kitchen, and it serves many functions. I'll just add, it didn't just impact the human infrastructure. On at least one of Maine's puffin colonies, a lot of the rocks and soil that puffins burrow into was completely displaced during this storm as well. So there's been some renovation by the birds, some adjustments to kind of the new arrangement of boulders and rocks, and some resorting of where birds are nesting. They display a lot of faithfulness to even the specific burrow that they nested in previous years. We have one pair of puffins that we watch on a webcam.
Millie and Willie.
Millie and Willie. So they've been together in the same burrow since 2019. Willie has been in that burrow since 2016. So they really do display a lot of faithfulness or loyalty to that spot. It's a great place for pairs to meet up again, to find each other, and they just know that environment. They've worked out the situation with most of their neighbors. And so, yeah, they really have that loyalty to even that specific spot. I mean, even higher level of loyalty to the island where they nest, but even very specific locations.
We have so much more to learn. Still to come on Maine's Summer of Puffins. We pick a name for the new Center Maine bird. And our David Guildford takes a trip to Eastern Egg Rock to get a feel for what living among the puffins is all about. We'll be right back. There's a lot of love for puffins, which was confirmed when we adopted a puffin living on Maine's coast and asked our viewers for help in naming it. We felt it deserved something better than just the scientific EN78. So take a look back from the moment Brian Yacono, Keith Carson, and I announced the winner from over 400 submissions.
So we opened up the naming contest about 2 weeks ago, and we received a lot of results. In fact, 390 entries came through our website, although 8 of them were blank and 1 just said email. But we want to dive into some of those suggestions from you. And just a note, it seems like there were very few suggestions that were just a waste of time. We want to thank you for taking this seriously over the last few weeks.
Absolutely. We start with ones that made us laugh, though. Yesterday, someone suggested boing. Then later, we got boing. Sean Connery was a surprise. Sausage Egg McPuffin came in a couple of forms. Clown Baby, Seagull.
Okay, same category. We also had EN79, Big Man Jim, Chance the Flapper, which is objectively great, the Killer, Peter Griffin, and we also had this run of entries, Bob, Bobby, Mr. Bob, and someone submitted Freak Bob twice.
Very popular one. There were Olympic-themed names, because we've done this over the last few weeks. Olympic was submitted twice. Olympia, Olympias, Ollie, short for Olympics, Pierre, Biles, Paris, Isaiah for Olympian Isaiah Harris of Lewiston, Ryan or Caleb for Olympic swimmers Ryan Lochte, and Caleb Dressel, LeBron.
Yeah, some wanted us to name him after something newsy. In fact, newsy was suggested a few times. Some plays on our Portland call letters, WCSH. Lee Goldberg was suggested, and Keith got a nod, though not Keith Jr.
Similar size nose. We also had Ian and some variations on that, like Sir Ian McPuffin. Because his designated name is EN78, there were other various names. Jeff, Leroy, Kevin, Edwin, David, Walter, Marty, Bertrand? It goes on.
Yeah, a lot of common names there. Finally, we got some suggestions that were tributes to Maine and the people who live here. Ralph for Ralph Eldridge, the former lighthouse keeper at Machias Seal Island. Mike after the man who carves puffins and sells them in New Harbor. Moxie, of course, we know that one why, and several people suggested Peary for Robert Peary, the Arctic explorer with ties to Maine. Abenaki, Acadia, and also Quaddy.
Our producer narrowed it down to 1 or 2 from each category, although if there's one we loved, we can still try to fight for it. So Sean Connery, Egg McPuffin, Ollie, Isaiah, Ian, Bertrand, Ralph for the lighthouse keeper, Mike for the puffin carver, and Peary for the explorer. All right, guys, what are you thinking?
I have a top 2.
Top 2, go ahead.
I'm Ralph and Ian.
Okay, Ian's in my top 2.
Okay, see?
Okay. Ooh, I'm ironic name, so I like
course.
Egg McPuffin or Chance the Flapper.
We had a hunch that we would be on the same page.
We did.
This is my life right
did.
now.
This
I'm
really
trying to make
is.
jokes. You guys take a name like Ian and make it serious.
Listen, if you're really
Ian's pretty
pushing
great.
for
Yeah.
one or the other,
I think Chance the Flapper is objectively hilarious, but what were your other ones? Ian and what?
Ian and Ralph for the lighthouse keeper. I know, they
I
live
was
on a rock in
Ian
the middle of the ocean.
or Peary.
Okay, we got to do Ian then.
Let's
we gotta
do
do
Ian.
because that's the compromise solution.
Okay.
here.
I love that though because he
Excellent
was
choice.
Ian.
Yes, Ian 7. By the way, it took me a while to connect the Ian 78
Yes.
to
Yeah.
Right, so it's a little nod to a scientific name.
Honestly,
I get it.
huge thank you to everyone
Yeah.
who sent in submissions, though. We really appreciate it. We had a great time doing this.
A real blast doing it over the last few weeks. We appreciate it, and we will be right back.
As we learned more about our new Center Maine puffin, Ian, we wanted to know more about what puffins do in their off-season. We see puffins along the coast when they come to land to mate and raise a puffling, but that's just 4 months of their life. I spoke with Jill Taylor, who's studying populations off the coast of Newfoundland. We started with, where do puffins go after mating season?
They spread out. They've been found in parts of the Mediterranean. They've been found in parts of North Africa. So their paths are all different, but they do disperse for the 8 months of the year. And they're just at sea, basically bobbing around.
Just floating and feeding in the ocean until returning to the same island and same burrow to breed.
They're designed for the water. They're waterproof feathers. They're excellent divers. I'm sure some of you have seen puffins try to walk on land. Like I said, they're super awkward on land. They're not very good flyers either. They have a really large, they're small birds, but they have a large weight compared to their wingspan. So they're really bad at flying. If you've ever seen a puffin try to take off from the water, it's very chaotic and probably the least graceful thing you've ever seen. They often need the help of gravity, like falling off a taller cliff to kind of get them started. They're very, very comfortable in the water.
When they're out in the water, because I think of, sharks or other predators in the ocean, but do they have more predators on land?
They breed on islands to hopefully avoid land mammals such as foxes or mink being able to get to their young. So their young are the most vulnerable for predation events. And I have seen a great blackback gull actually swoop in to a burrow, and I guess a puffin chick was hanging out too close to the edge and actually swooped in and took the pufflings right out of the burrow, which is the circle of life, I understand, but it was very sad to watch. It's really too bad. They're really good at catching fish, but the gulls will actually use the puffins as like their own fishers. So they'll actually go steal the fish that the puffins have fished already, which is a smart strategy for them, but kind of sucks for the puffin.
Puffins mate for life, but they don't stick together during their off season.
Yeah, they've spent 8 months of the year apart, and so they come back together. I maintain that I think they're only able to mate for life because they spend 8 months a year apart from each other.
Fair enough.
In fairness, they sort of drop appearances during their time apart. Those beautiful orange and yellow beaks we know them for are for mating season only.
They actually lose those bill plates, like those two side bits. They actually fall off, and they lose some of their eye ornaments as well. So yeah, they look completely different.
When people are talking to you about puffins, what is it that makes you light up about them?
It's almost the reverse. I feel like when I bring up puffins, the other people are the first to light up, which is really cool. Everyone thinks they're super cute. They are one of the most charismatic seabirds. I don't blame them for that. And I think people can relate to them too, because they have these really cute family units where they're staying together for a long period of time and coming together and showing a lot of parental care to a chick. It's just fun to be able to watch them in their natural behavior and their natural habitat. They do really awkward things. They'll sometimes land on each other when they're trying to income to their burrow, which looks just very awkward and funny. I've seen them try to surf waves when there's really big waves next to the island, which is fun. And their chicks are absolutely adorable. They are just literally literal balls of fluff. And somehow they turn into this very resilient bird that can stand 8 months at sea.
resilient, and very cute. And it's certainly not enough to see photos. So our David Guildford actually hopped on a boat to experience life on one of the protected Puffin Islands off of Maine's coast. It wasn't just a beautiful view, it was a learning experience for David once on the rock.
In the quiet town of Bremen, I hopped on a boat with Don Lyons, Director of Conservation Science at the Audubon Seabird Institute. 7 miles out into the fog, a tiny island comes into view, as does a greeting party.
Please keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times.
Arden Kelly is a kind soul for paddling me in, though she and her 3 Audubon research colleagues seem happy to have company on Eastern Egg Rock, because the locals can be a bit much.
As soon as you step foot on this island, one thing becomes blindingly apparent. It belongs to the birds.
Oh man, the noise is tough. The birds do not quiet at night. It is loud 24/7.
The ones making the racket are terns. Despite this work environment, birds are why the team of 4 is here, gladly signing up to live on this rock from May through mid-August to study a most peculiar-looking Maine species, puffins. Dawn, Arden, and I sat in a blind and watched the spectacle. More than 400 puffins migrate here each spring to find lifelong mates and reproduce. They're expert swimmers, frantic flyers, and they're a serious tourist attraction. But this scene was almost lost forever.
Puffins were absent from this island perhaps for as much as 100 years, from the late 1800s until 1973, when Audubon began a restoration program and brought the first pufflings, down from Canada.
Humans hunted puffins off this island. Now, under Project Puffin, these people protect and study a healthy colony. In fact, they seem to be one with this place. The team's presence keeps predators like eagles away, and some strange things happen here.
This is a laughing gold chick.
Do you regularly just snatch birds off the ground?
Yeah. There we go. All right.
Wait a minute. How often does that happen?
Oh, very often.
And this tern chick seems to have befriended them. Researchers telling me they nursed it after its family abandoned it. Now it rarely leaves their camp while it matures.
They're really buoyant.
Back at work, to the left of our blind, I noticed research assistant Cameron Zoller sitting patiently in another. And then I saw she was holding a very long string.
Oh, we got one. We got a puffin.
Oh, you got
Nice. Nice job.
They catch and carefully tag the birds so they and other agencies can keep tabs on the populations
365 weight.
as they migrate to Maine in May and from here in August.
They are also really dense, like they feel like a little football.
They also take some measurements, and then it's time for an awkward goodbye.
Since puffins are so dense, they can't really just take off from standing. They have to get some momentum. And since we have him in hand, we have to give him the momentum. So we usually go to the edge and we granny toss him. Yay! Honestly, the best part of the job. I love it so much.
Zoller then showed us another favorite pastime,
He grew so much.
searching for puffin chicks.
You go down, follow the poop. That's what we always go by. And then you go all the way in here. And that's where he lives. Oh.
The team has noticed earlier puffling birds as they adapt to climate change. There are challenges ahead, but they believe this habitat is a success story worthy of optimism.
With a little hard work and dedication and a little elbow grease and a little love and maybe the not caring about bird poop so much can really provide the results to show that our dedication can make a difference in terms of conservation and that projects that take initiative like this one can lead to beautiful things and lots of furry, happy, plump babies.
Life here is hard for bird and human alike.
Ready? Hold on.
But these few dedicate themselves here to make us better stewards of Maine.
Yeah, that's it. That's all.
That was David Guildford reporting for us. One researcher can be credited with growing Maine's puffin population. When we come back, we hear from Stephen Kress about his Project Puffin and the constant doubt he faced. Sometimes to wrap things up, you have to go back to the beginning. Maine has a puffin population thanks to one determined researcher who hatched a plan more than 50 years ago. His idea was to take newly hatched puffins from Newfoundland and bring them back to eastern Egg Rock, where they had once lived, but over the years had been killed off by predators and humans. It was a wild idea at the time, but Stephen Kress thought maybe if they grew up on the island, they'd come back to it as adults and keep breeding. I spoke with Kress about the so-called Project Puffin and the years he probably could have given up, but didn't.
After about the first 4 years, when none of the puffins came back, I was starting to, wonder for sure.
Every summer for those first 4 years, Stephen Kress and a team of researchers planted themselves on eastern Egg Rock, along with a new batch of pufflings taken from Canada's population, kept them safe, and watched them fledge, never knowing if they'd return to the island.
And because normally puffins are colonial birds, it would take a very brave puffin to land on an island all by itself. So my think around that was to try to put some decoys on the island to give them the impression there were other puffins there. Eventually, I even played recordings of puffins. And eventually, I also put mirrors up to give the puffins something to look at that would move. They did land almost immediately. We had our first sighting within days of putting up the decoys.
What was that feeling like when you first saw one coming back to the island?
Well, it was like super exciting because there had been so many critics and naysayers that said this was never going to work. It was a total miracle in my mind, because what this meant was that the chicks had learned that Egg Rock was their home, and they had, at least a few of them, had remembered that. There's thousands of islands in Maine alone. So the puffins had to remember exactly how to get back to Egg Rock. And so a few of them did, and that meant that maybe more would do, and that was the first signs of hope.
As one of the most successful rebuilds of a bird colony, Project Puffin hasn't just rekindled a population in Maine. Kress says it's also become an important training ground.
There's about almost 1,000 young biologists that have been trained now at Eastern Egg Rock over the last 50 years, and many of them are starting their own projects. Some of them have had whole careers of their own that were sparked by this experience. So that's kind of the new way I see Egg Rock and the other restored colonies on the Maine coast, places to inspire the next generation of biologists.
So 51 years into this project, it sounds like you still believe this is just the beginning.
This is a new way of thinking. It's a new way of thinking about the stewardship of the planet and how people have a responsibility to take care of life on Earth. We can't assume that nature will take care of all these things, because we have such a profound effect on the nature of this planet.
Despite incredible growth in the colony, without the teams of researchers who come back each summer, Kress says Maine's puffin population would easily be wiped out again by predators like gulls and eagles. So the project presses on. Kress is no longer involved, but he remains hopeful for its future.
This hands-on, active approach, that was the big surprise. And it works so wonderful that many other people are using these methods around the world. I know about 800 other projects in many countries, helping about a third of the world's seabirds now, the seabird species. And it's not just about the seabirds. These rich ocean spots that the seabirds are showing us, they're also important for fish, for sea turtles, for marine mammals, for all the wildlife that people care about, that should be concerned about.
You can learn so much more about Project Puffin on our website or our News Center Maine app, and how to support the Audubon's continuing efforts. We hope you've enjoyed our summer of puffins as much as we have. Thanks for being with us, and remember to keep your eyes on the seas and the skies for those adorable and goofy seabirds.